Moldova's governing pro-Europe party has won an outright majority in parliamentary elections, a key test of whether the small European nation is moving closer to the EU or Russia. With almost all results now in, President Maia Sandu's Party of Action and Solidarity has won just over 50% of the total vote. That's more than double the vote share won by the pro-Russia opposition bloc, which wants to pull Moldova away from the European Union and forge closer ties with Moscow. Moldova's Prime Minister has accused Russia of spending huge sums of money to disrupt the election. We're joined now by DW correspondent Rosie Birchard in the Moldovan capital, Chisinau. The pro-European ruling party PAS, led by President Sandu, retained its majority in Parliament. Rosie, how clear is the signal sent by voters here?
Much clearer than we thought. It's a much more convincing win than some polls had suggested. We were expecting the pro-European PAS party to still come out on top, but perhaps lose its majority. It has defied those predictions and secured a much clearer win, in fact. And you could hear almost a sighs of relief. I was at the party headquarters. There was kind of a sense of jubilance. And you can also hear kind of sighs of relief almost all the way from Brussels, because in this election that was really seen as a geopolitical battle of influence between the East and West, there's a real sense that this is a kind of a win also for the idea of Europe. But it should be said that it's not universally welcomed. There will be many Moldovans who are waking up who are disappointed by this. We've spoken to people who say they would like closer ties with Russia, who don't have faith in the pro-Western vision, or simply say they don't want to be asked to choose between these two global spheres of influence.
Moldova has been a candidate for accession to the European Union since 2022. Is this election a significant hurdle now? Could accession happen relatively quickly?
Accession is a process. Joining the EU is something which tends to take years. It involves in serious reforms. The fact is that with this clear majority, it will be easier for Moldova to undertake those reforms which are needed to achieve eligibility, things like laws to curb corruption, for example. Then it will really be over to the European Union to look inward and do its own homework, because if that bloc wants to credibly be able to welcome new members into the club, be able to speed up its decision-making, to be able to become more efficient, it might have its own reforms to do. And if it doesn't manage to open its doors and get Moldova and other aspirant EU members in within the next few years, then there will be a real sense of false promises and letting those countries that have put their faith in a path toward joining the EU languish in the West's waiting room.
The pro-Russian bloc has called for protests, Rosie, in front of the Parliament this afternoon, we understand. What are they saying?
They are really furious. They have some accusations. They think the election has more or less been stolen. We heard, for example, their real fury over some decisions which were taken at the last minute to move some polling stations near the pro-Russian breakaway region in Moldova of Transnistria. Those polling stations were moved, Moldovan authorities said, over security concerns. But we spoke to some people who felt that that was impacting their right to vote, although we did see Transnistrians being able to go up and cast their ballots on Moldovan soil. They are also really angry about some parties being banned at the very last minute. That was over concerns around illegal financing. Given the suspicions around massive foreign interference that shrouded around these elections, they were really overshadowed by reports of bot networks, for example, spreading anti-government content online. Also reports of Moldovan citizens being trained to incite violent unrest abroad. Reports of people being paid if they're ready to show up and protest against the government. The Moldovan authorities really spared no effort in trying to keep these elections on path, but of course that has been controversial, and certainly those opposition members will be making that voice heard today. They're unhappy with the outcome, but it is a pretty clear outcome. It's a win for the pro-European PAS party.
DW correspondent Rosie Birchard in the Moldovan capital, Chisinau. Thanks so much. Well, for more on this, let's talk to Clara Volintiru. She's the director of the Bucharest office of the think tank, the German Marshall Fund. Welcome to you. The pro-European ruling party PAS, led by President Sandu, has won a majority of the votes. How clear is the signal sent by voters in Moldova now?
Good morning. Indeed, the signal sent by voters at the parliamentary elections in Moldova yesterday was a very clear, yet another very clear sign of support for Moldova's European future. After last year's EU referendum that passed with a majority in favor of EU accession, this year's parliamentary elections mark yet another testimony of confidence of the Moldovan population towards the European Union. And it also marks the struggle that President Maia has put forward very adamantly to anchor her country towards a European future and to counter the hybrid warfare and electoral disturbances from Russia.
Yeah, how significant is this rejection of Russia? Is that a significant element of this result?
I believe so. If we look at the electoral results of the pro-Russian party, the electoral share is much lower than would have been feared. But this is also because the government and the political elites, pro-European political elites, have called off very early the manipulation tactics, both in the press and practically countering the clientelistic networks that Ilan Shor has supported from abroad. Prosecuting vote-buying techniques and other disturbances across the electoral cycle. So people were aware that these manipulation techniques were unfolding. Unfortunately, they will continue to unfold across Moldova even after the elections.
Yeah, there was a lot of claims about vote interference in the lead up to the election. How did the actual day of voting unfold itself?
The electoral day was not marked by major incidents. And again, the government and the authorities were prepared to counter some of the destabilizing elements that happened in past elections as well. Bomb threats. There were bomb threats again in every diaspora voting center that had longer queues, because we know the diaspora is a strong supporter. The Moldovan diaspora strongly supports the European accession of Moldova. So there was a clear element of disturbance across the electoral process that was not designed just to stop the votes on the elections day, but also to diminish the trust in the results, which is something that we will see across the following days with protests already organized and the countering of the electoral results, the contestation of the electoral results by the pro-Russian forces.
Moldovans have expressed frustration over economic hardship in the country, as well as scepticism over this drive to join the EU. How difficult is the job now for the PAS party to deliver on the promises of both economic reforms and European integration?
It is a shared challenge. The faster and better the reform process will unfold, the greater the economic opportunities for Moldova, its citizens, and small and medium-sized enterprises. So the government being a PAS majority government in the years to come, under the guidance and leadership of President Maia Sandu, will likely pursue the European integration agenda at a very fast pace and with great determination, like we've seen in the past. We know that her target is EU accession by 2030, so they will probably move very adamantly towards that direction. If this happens, then we will see funding opportunities both from the EU and the private sector coming into Moldova and resolving some of the stringent issues, such as energy supplies, economic opportunities, jobs, better salaries, and so on.
Clara, we'll leave it there. Clara Volintiru, Director of the Bucharest office of the German Marshall Fund. Thanks so much.
Thank you.